Central Park was Sarah Mitchell's sanctuary. She often sat on the same worn bench in the shade of the tall oak trees, her face turned to the wind, listening to the symphony of birds and the distant laughter of children, her hand clutching the leather leash of Bud, her faithful German shepherd. Seeing eye dog Bud was more than just her companion, he was her protector, her eyes and her lifeline after the car accident that had taken her sight 5 years earlier. Despite the peaceful surroundings, Bud was restless, his ears twitched at every sound, his sharp eyes scanned the park as if anticipating trouble. On the other side of the park, Hank McCoy leaned against his motorcycle, surrounded by a small group of leather-clad bikers. With his massive frame, his shaved head and tattoos, Hank had a look that demanded attention. He noticed Sarah sitting quietly next to Bud. Something about her peaceful demeanor coupled with her disciplined doggy stand. "You rubbed it the wrong way, threw your cigarette on the ground." Hank smirked as he looked at the princess with her perfect little dog. He giggled as he walked away from his bike while his friends giggled behind him. Hank's heavy boots slapped the pavement as he crossed the park, heading straight for Sarah. Bud noticed him first. The dog's ears perked up, his body tensed as a low growl escaped his chest. Sarah felt the pull of her leash and tilted her head towards the sound of approaching footsteps. "Hey," Hank said mockingly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Good dog, you got him. He does tricks. Maybe he can jump through hoops or roll over for us." Sarah tightened her grip on Bud's leash, her heartbeat quickened. She couldn't see the man, but she could hear the malice in his voice. "Leave us alone," she said firmly in a tone that hid the fear bubbling inside her. But Hank didn't back down. Instead, he clapped his hands loudly, trying to provoke Bud. The dog remained calm, his piercing gaze staying locked on Hank, even as his growl deepened. "Oh, tough guy, huh?" Hank sneered, taking another step forward. By now, several passers-by had stopped to watch the scene unfold, but no one dared intervene. Sensing the attention, Hank decided to up the ante. He raised his foot as if to kick Bud. The shepherd's growl turned into a deep guttural warning, and Sarah screamed, "Don't you dare!" Hank didn't know that Bud was more than just a dog before he became Sarah's handler. Bud was a military K-9 working dog, trained for high-risk missions and capable of taking down threats far greater than this man. As Hank's foot approached, Bud's instincts, honed over years of combat training, came to the surface. His muscles tensed, and his gaze remained focused only on his aggressor. Silence reigned in the park. The air became still. Was tense as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Hank's laughter echoed through the park as he lifted his leg higher, clearly enjoying the tension he was creating. "Come on, show me what you got," he chuckled. Sarah's fingers tightened on Bud's leash, her knuckles turned white. She couldn't see the scene unfolding, but the energy in the air was electric and threatening. But Bud remained perfectly still, his body tense as a coiled spring. His growl deepened, warning Hank that his next move could be his last mistake. The small crowd that had gathered froze, unsure whether to intervene. Some held their phones in their hands, filming the argument, while others whispered nervously, "Someone had to stop him," a woman muttered, but no one stepped forward. Sarah's voice broke with desperation and she screamed again, "Leave us alone. He's not just a dog, he'll defend himself." But the warning only fueled Hank's bravado. "Defend yourself, he's being sarcastic. He's just a big lap dog, look." At this, as Hank lunged forward, his foot pointed at Bud, the German shepherd lunged into action with a speed that stunned everyone. Bud dodged the kick and let out a sharp commanding sound that echoed through the park in one fluid motion, but Bud stepped between Sarah and Hank, his sharp teeth bared, his eyes fixed on the man. This was not the behavior of an ordinary dog. This was the reaction of a professional protector, trained to neutralize threats. Hank backed away, caught off guard by the intensity emanating from Bud. For a brief moment, everything was still. Sarah, clutching Bud's leash, felt the vibration of his movement and the tension in the air. She knew something had changed. Bud whispered, her voice shaking. The dog didn't look back at her. His attention was completely focused on Hank, ready for whatever was to come. Hank wasn't laughing anymore. His confident grin was gone, replaced by a glimmer. "Worry, what the hell is the problem with this dog?" he muttered, his voice no longer mocking but uncertain as the crowd grew rowdy and the phones recorded every second. The man in the park ranger uniform finally pushed through. What was going on here, he demanded, his voice firm. Hank froze, his bravado gone as he realized he was now the center of unwanted attention. Bud stayed where he was, not moving, his body language making it clear that if Hank tried to do anything else the outcome would not be in his favor. Sarah took a shaky breath as she felt the tension on Bud's leash loosen slightly, but she knew the danger was not over yet. Hank took a cautious step back, his hands raised slightly as if trying to downplay his actions. Relax, I was just messing with the dogs by overreacting, he muttered, though his voice lacked the confidence it had moments before, as Ranger Park, now standing between Hank and Sarah, crossed his arms over his chest, his expression stern. What do you call threatening a seeing-eye dog? Frolicking, that's not just reckless, that's illegal. Sarah grabbed Bud's leash, still shaking, however Bud remained firmly standing in front of her, his intense gaze fixed on Hank. The tension in the air was palpable, and the murmurs of the crowd only added to the anxiety. The ranger continued, his voice even but firm. This dog was doing his job protecting her, and from the sound of it, he was doing his job better than you, being a decent human being. Hank's smirk disappeared completely as the ranger's words hit home. Meanwhile Bud's growling continued, and Sarah's hand instinctively reached down to touch his head. She whispered, "Good boy, Bud," her voice shaking but full of gratitude. The crowd around them watched silently, some filming the scene on their phones, others murmuring in low tones voices. But then an older man, the man stepped forward, his battered military cap reflected the sunlight and his voice cut through the whispers. "This is no ordinary dog," the man said. His tone was calm but confident, his weathered face showed years of experience, and he pointed straight at Bud. "I know that pose anywhere, it's a K9. The crowd gasped and even Hank looked stunned. Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion as she turned to the man. "What do you mean he's my guide dog?" she said, tightening her grip on the leash. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The man stepped closer, nodding slowly. "He can be your guide dog now, Ma, but I bet he's served before. The focus that barks is instinct. Only a trained military dog could have that." The revelation hit Sarah like a wave. She crouched down next to Bud, her fingers ran her fingers through his thick fur, as if seeing him in a new light. "Bud," she murmured, her voice shaking with awe and disbelief. She had always known Bud was exceptional, but she had never thought his past meant so much. "This man," his voice continued, "even but full of respect for dogs like him. Heroes train them for combat zones to protect soldiers and eliminate threats. If he's reacting like this, it's because he sees this man as a danger." He shot Hank a sharp look and the biker shifted uncomfortably, his confidence fading more and more. Hank's bravado completely gone. He took another step back, his shoulders slumped. "I didn't know," he muttered, his voice barely audible. The ranger stepped closer to him, his tone unyielding. "Ignorance is no excuse for your actions. You're lucky that dog showed restraint." Bud finally relaxed a little but kept his eyes on Hank as if ensuring he wouldn't try anything else. Sarah took a shuddering breath, her heart still pounding as she processed what she'd just learned. The crowd was now buzzing with awe. They couldn't take their eyes off Bud. He wasn't just a seeing-eye dog anymore, he was a warrior. The park ranger stared at Hank with a mixture of authority and disgust. "You're done for," he barked, gesturing for the man to back off, but Hank hesitated, his eyes darting nervously between Bud and the older man who had deduced the dog's true nature. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder and someone shouted, "Call the police." Hank cursed under his breath, his tough guy act crumbling under the weight of public condemnation. Bud, though a little more relaxed, stood his ground, his eyes still trained on Hank, like a sentry ready to act if necessary. Sarah felt as if the world was spinning around her. Bud, a military dog, her mind racing with the older man's words, war zones, soldiers, threats. She crouched down next to Bud, her fingers shaking as she stroked him fur. "Bud," she whispered softly, as if trying to connect with a side of him she'd never known. He turned his head slightly toward her, his eyes softening for a moment before focusing on Hank again, the unwavering devotion in his gaze sending a wave of emotion through her. Who was this dog she'd trusted with her life for years? The older man stepped forward again, his expression serious but kind. "Ma'am, you should know that dogs like him don't just forget about their training, they dig deep, waiting for the moment when they'll be needed." and today he thought you'd need him." Sarah swallowed hard, feeling the tears sting her eyes. She remembered every time Bud had seemed unusually attentive or protective, every time his bark had stopped her in her tracks. She had always seen him as her guide, but now she realized he had been so much more, all this time. Meanwhile, Hank's discomfort was becoming unbearable. Okay, he muttered, backing away. "I didn't mean anything bad. The park ranger didn't believe me." "It's not up to you," he barked. "You've done enough." Hank turned to leave, his shoulders hunched as the ranger followed him, making sure he didn't come back. The crowd began to slowly disperse, though some still remained focused on Sarah and Bud. An older man lingered too, watching Bud with an expression on his face. Respect that spoke for itself as the last murmur of the crowd died away. Sarah remained on the bench, her hand on Bud's back. "You were always my protector," she murmured, her voice shaking slightly, "but I never knew how far you would go for me." Bud sat next to her, calm and confident, his eyes now scanning the park, as if making sure that the danger to Sarah had passed. The park no longer felt like a refuge to her, it felt like the place where she had discovered a truth she had never expected, one that would forever change the way she saw Bud and herself that evening. Sarah sat on the edge of her small couch, looking down at Bud, who was resting at her feet. The events of the day rushed through her mind like a whirlwind. Hank's aggression, the meddling park rangers, and above all, the revelation of Bud's past. She reached for her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keys as she hesitated. What would she look for? She didn't know where to begin, but the words, K9 military history, eventually came to mind as she read countless articles and stories. Her understanding of Bud deepened. These dogs weren't just trained, they were soldiers in every sense of the word. They were trained to spot threats, protect their handlers, and remain calm under pressure. Every detail matched the way Bud had acted that day perfectly, but it also raised questions about what he'd been through, who he'd served with, and why he was with her. The thought of Bud risking his life in dangerous situations brought both pride and sadness to Sarah's heart. She closed her laptop and sat on the floor next to Bud. Her fingers gently ran through his thick fur and she spoke softly. "I've always trusted you, Bud, but now I understand why." The next day, Sarah made a decision. She called the local veterans organization, explained what had happened, and asked if there was any way to learn more about Bud's story. The woman on the other end of the line promised to look into it. Many retired K9s are reassigned to new positions, like guides or therapy dogs. She explained that it was a way to give them purpose after their service. Sarah's chest tightened. The word was too much for her. Bud hadn't been given to her just to help her. He had saved her in ways she couldn't even begin to understand. When the call ended, Sarah knelt down next to Bud again.